Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Everybody has had on their mind, where can they run away to? The world is falling apart. People want freedom. Some people don't want freedom. We're having this big clash of cultures, and some people don't want to participate in it. They just want to run away. So today I'm joined by my co-host, Josh Shagala. Hey, Josh.
Hello, hello. How are you,
Very
Tatiana? You feeling good?
Yes, all good, all good. Let's jump right in with Mark Edge from Free Talk Live. Hey, Mark, welcome back to the Tatiana Show again.
Thank you. I love being on the Tatiana Show.
We love having you on here. So what do you think of what's going on out there? Josh is over at Voltoro. He's got, his eye on the gold market that's been pumping. You've obviously been keeping an eye on things for a really long time. Do you feel vindicated with your tinfoil hat? Because everybody called us conspiracy theorists, and now they're not laughing.
Well, I guess I've been ignoring the haters for a long time, so I just don't pay much attention. But I've got to say that anybody would say that there's a spectrum of freedom in any given country, and that some countries have better features of freedom than other countries, depending on what it is that you like. I mean, everybody's going to say North Korea sucks, and everybody's going to say that Western Europe and the United States, by and large, should be in the top 20. Okay, so all right, let's talk about what makes one of those places freer and better, and what's some of the things that you might want to have and some of the things you might not want to have. And many features are shared by many of these top 20 countries, and many of those features are not. So for instance, if you like hookers and blackjack and smoking weed, Nevada might be a really nice, jurisdiction for you. So a little shopping could be your thing. If it's not your thing, then, and by the way, there's plenty of places in the world that have, those particular features, and they're not going to make my life any better or worse. So I'm not looking. New Hampshire, you can drive around without a seatbelt, but, if you like sliding through the front windshield of your car, then there you go. If you're a scuba diver, then maybe the Caribbean or the South Pacific are places for you to be. Everything's got features, and I'm always kind of looking for these features. So I've been on the lookout for different places that people might go. And I do live in New Hampshire, the live free or die state. I moved here for the Free State Project in 2006, and I've been keeping an eye on it. And we are definitely free to have lots of libertarians arguing with each other. We've got that. So, however, ice falls from the sky half of the year here. And if that doesn't indicate freedom to you, slipping on ice and falling on your butt doesn't feel like freedom, then maybe some other place. I recently spent 67 days this year in Saipan. And by the way,
Where's Saipan?
Saipan is the Commonwealth.
Taipan with a T.
Yeah, no, it's Saipan. Saipan. It's the largest or the most populous island of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. So many people have heard of Guam. Guam is the southern Mariana Island, and because the Spanish split them up at the end of the Spanish-American War and the treaty that between the United States and Spain at that time, those have been, for whatever reason, unlinked. So Guam became a U.S. territory, which people know about for the purposes of the Navy and that kind of thing. And the rest of the Northern Mariana Islands were sold to Germany, then lost to Japan in World War I, then lost to the United States in World War II. And they're the only territory, U.S. territory, that has a contract as opposed to being the spoils of war. And they have, mind you, some of the Guinness Book of World Records declares them the most consistent weather in the world. So it's always between, 70 and 90 there. And, it rains, but not so you want rain on a tropical island, and every once in a while they have a devastating hurricane. So they call them typhoons. But yeah, I mean, it was a nice place to spend. By the way, because of a odd IRS law, I am currently considered by the United States government and the Internal Revenue Service to be on Saipan. I left on the third to last plane out, and within 14 days, I left 10 days before the declaration of an emergency, which was for COVID-19, which is still going on. So I am considered legally still in the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, and therefore have reached the bona fide residency status, according to the IRS. And there are only three ways to get off the IRS's rolls. One, there's death. Two, there's not just moving to another country, but moving to another country and denouncing your U.S. citizenship. So at that point, they can't tax you anymore. The United States is one of the few countries in the world that will tax you no matter where you go. So big disadvantage to being a U.S. resident, citizen, if you are one.
Yeah, let me actually cut you off there for a second. So I've heard about people having to give up their citizenship, and people have asked me, are the taxes still due? I think Roger Ver did that. Do they not let you back in? Can you explain that to just the average person? How would that work?
Sure.
And is it how do you even do it? Is it hard to do?
So if it's, there are quintiles of income in the United States, right? So if you're in the bottom 3 quintiles and wish to announce your citizenship, it's basically an act of paperwork. There's a gentleman known as the stateless man, I believe, Gogolski. If you look him up, you can kind of see. And, basically all he had to do was file some paperwork. And he's managed to not have a citizenship anywhere, but he lives in Germany. And he can move around the EU with some luck. But if you're in the top 2 quintiles, so upper middle class or upper class, it starts meaning that you're going to have to pay some money. If you're like Roger Ver and you're in that, the 1%, as it were, basically you're going to have to, take 50% of what you own, they're going to take before you can leave. And Roger considered that to be worth it. And I remember talking to him at the time. He said, I'm not going to reveal anything else, but I'm going to consider this news, and this just gives some kind of devastation. His tax bill, the bill for putting together his taxes, not the taxes, the bill for putting together his taxes was 6 figures. So whammo, bammo, they got him real good. But if you're in the, upper middle class or middle class, they're going to want a chunk of change. And I don't know what that chunk of change is, depends on for each person, but they essentially take what they can get, which is about half of what they can, half of what you got. So, there you go, with some exceptions and exemptions of those kind of things. So that's if you give up your U.S. citizenship. The third way to get off the IRS's rolls is to move to one of what I believe to be 4 territories. So that's Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, American Samoa. It's 5. Yeah, Guam and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. The United States has possessions and other little bits of land around the world, some little rocks that people don't even live on. But essentially, if you pick up and move to one of those places, their tax laws go into effect. In Saipan, part of their contract with the United States when they became a territory was that they'd keep the same IRS code. However, they would they can give discounts. So I think if you make under like $20,000, you pay nothing. It's 100% discount. If you're under $100,000, it's a 50% discount. If you're under, and everything up above that is a 30% discount. So, you can save 30% on your taxes if, you're a big earner by moving to Saipan. I would make the caveat that long-term capital gains, so for instance, if you bought Bitcoin in 2011 and you're attempting to sell it in 2021, you will have to pay the long-term capital gains back to the United States. If you're a tax protester like I am, and you're concerned with what the United States does with tax money, basically, I would say this about Saipan. None of the tax dollars go to the United States government. They don't pay anything. Saipan doesn't pay anything to the U.S. In fact, quite the opposite. So if you're paying your money in, you're paying for an inefficient government as opposed to bombs that are dropped on wedding parties and hospitals.
Wow. Okay, so I know Josh had some questions, but I have to ask, how do you not go to jail as an objector? You know what I mean? Like, can you just say, I don't want to pay taxes? You guys keep spending it on bombing people, because I would like to sign up for that.
Right. I
I
object.
think a lot of people would, right? So are you able to do that? Because you had Erwin Schiff, right? He went and got totally trashed for trying to reveal any kind of stuff around that.
Yep.
Because, some people would say that the IRS is voluntary in the first place, but it doesn't seem to be so with all the people going to jail about it.
The first piece of advice I would give is don't claim as a U.S. citizen living in the United States that the IRS has any voluntary programs. Don't tell people that they can file pieces of paper and get out of a system where they have to pay taxes. Now, you can go ahead and do that, but I'm just saying I don't do that. That's my piece of advice, because that appears to be the people that they lock up. If you are like tens of millions of Americans and simply don't file taxes, then, you just don't file taxes. They don't have paperwork. I do,
Wait, tens of millions of people are not filing taxes? What the freaking hell am I doing this for?
let me tell you how the numbers, I looked it up, I think, for tax year 2005, which I think is a good year to look at because it was before the economic downturn previously. I could look again, but I know the numbers for tax year 2005. In 2005, there were about 300 million adults in America and about 144 million tax returns. Now, that doesn't mean half of Americans aren't filing a tax return. Some of those tax returns are joint, filed by husbands and wives, but it means that tens of millions, perhaps on up to 100 million, which of course is tens of millions, are not filing, adults. Forget the people over 65 and forget the kids under 18. Just that number. And I filed taxes since I was 15 years old, mind you. But just that number of people, I'm going to guess tens of millions of people are simply not filing. And, you can see these people in your everyday life. My co-host, Ian, hasn't filed taxes since 2000 and near the year 2000, somewhere.
Are you really announcing this on the show?
Oh, we announced it on the air on 200 radio stations across the United States, which you can listen to at freetalklive.com. Yeah, absolutely.
Aren't they going to show up at his door and say, hey, buddy, pay up?
Been 20 years. And they sent one time, they sent one letter written in Spanish asking him where, hey, we'd like to update our files about you. And he, shredded it. But it was written in Spanish. I mean, I don't even know what to say about these people. I have no idea. I know for a fact that he's been investigated by the FBI on 2 separate occasions for 2 separate things, and the FBI doesn't even seem to care that he's not filing taxes. They know. I can assure you they know, but they're not doing it.
Things like that you can get away with. It's really weird that you can get away with that kind of stuff. Like, I had bosses that were violating labor laws, and then, really grossly violating them, and then they got in trouble for it, but they didn't get into any trouble. And then, they were hiding all this cash and the government knew about it and they didn't do anything about that either. So I wonder if their bumbling idiocy is randomly working in our favor, but I don't think so, because some people do seem to get in trouble. And I think you might be right. But Ian's been talking about this stuff in a pretty radical fashion for a very long time. Free Talk Live, you guys have been doing this forever. So I don't know. That's definitely a whole other animal.
Yeah, I think that it's worth pointing out that the Bush administration cut IRS jobs, and that made Republicans happy. Nobody likes the IRS, but Republicans really hate them. Obama's administration had very little time to pass anything. There was just that first, several weeks where they got Obamacare through, and they never had any chance to go after, to hire people or anything like that. basic, and then Trump, of course, hates the IRS. And so essentially the IRS is running on a skeleton crew. They are, and for whatever reason, when they're doing audits, they're auditing, according to some stories I've read, a story I read recently, within the last couple of years, they're auditing middle-class people because middle-classy people are easier to audit than rich people.
Why? Because we can't fight them, right?
Right. You're not going to hire a lawyer if you're a middle-class person. You're not going to, because the lawyer is going to say, why don't you first produce the evidence that you have, which is a really great question that nobody ever asks the IRS. What evidence do you have about my earnings currently? I want to see it. I want you to produce that evidence. At which point, then you know how much they think you owe at this point. And according to the Constitution, you don't have to produce evidence against yourself. When somebody's coming to audit you, it's the beginnings of a criminal case. They should be looked at like a law enforcement officer at that point. And handing over reams and reams and reams of paperwork without any kind of question is probably ill-advised. But they love it. Let's go through this stuff and take some time. By the way, when I was in Saipan, I did talk to a business owner. He was a vape shop, by the way. He said that their Internal Revenue Service, whatever they call their revenue service, had come and done an audit on him. And that audit, he said, lasted 15 minutes. And, they didn't even want to look through his file cabinets. They just want to look at a couple of pieces of paper. So, they island time, right?
Wow.
Islands don't want to work hard.
I think it's everybody's worst nightmare to get audited in the US. It's just a terrible, terrible experience. Okay, so let's get back to where are we running?
So self-driving cars will lead people to move further out of the city and live out in the country. Do you think it's better to live out in the country? I think property prices will rise out there, but do you think it's just better to leave the USA? I mean, and also the other question was Puerto Rico. That's what I keep hearing is Puerto Rico is kind of the place to be if you're an American citizen.
Yeah, so Puerto Rico, let's talk about self-driving cars first. I concur with you completely. I also think it'll kill the airport business because, currently I have to drive an hour one way or the other to a couple of different airports. But if you can, hop in your car, play cards, look at your phone, take a nap, whatever it is you want to do, driving's not nearly the arduous task that it once was. And I think there'll probably be larger airports, and those airports will service more places that you want to go. And then the self-driving cars will work as sort of a spoke and hub system. And I agree with you when it comes to living out in the country. So, I'm married, and when you're married, you make some compromises in life on what you want to do. My wife wanted to live on a lake, and so we moved to a lake here in New Hampshire, and away from our farm, which was 11 wooded acres out in rural.
Wow.
So I'll say and what I wanted to do was just build a nicer house. Let's just let's make an addition and build a nicer house. Correctly, she said, look, if you build a house here, you can never make this property worth more than, say, $300,000. Nobody's going to pay $750,000 for this house here. However, if you move to the lake, because of the location, you can have the house of your dreams and get the money back out of it when you sell it. So that's a correct assumption. I acquiesced to that, and there you go. However, I'm now dealing with a crappy neighbor who, a couple of crappy neighbors that don't want me to do this thing or that thing. So freedom doesn't always, constrictions on your freedom doesn't always come from the government. Although in this case, the neighbor's a selectman of the local government. But it doesn't always come from the government, and they sometimes, but they'll try to use the government against you. So the closer somebody is, the more problems they're going to have. It all started because a visitor to my house was smoking a cigarette where the neighbor could smell it.
Oh, God.
Not illegal to smoke a cigarette in the state of New Hampshire or in this town or wherever we are. He just didn't like the smell. So, the feud then begins. And I went over to his property to pick up any cigarette butts because I pretended like I didn't understand what the problem was. And he said, there's no cigarette butts. I just don't like the smell. So, yes, I agree indubitably that if everybody had say 5-10 acres or hectares, or I'm not sure what the difference is there. But, if they had a little bit of land so they can keep themselves away from the other people, then yeah, maybe that would be helpful.
Wait a second. So I don't want to live in the sticks though. So am I just like doomed? The rest of the world is over. I mean, I have to go and live in New Hampshire. No offense, but and I'd be happy to have a summer home there and a winter home. But I mean, I'm a city girl. These cars aside, there are people that want to be social. They're single people. What are they going to only meet on the internet like weirdos? Or is the city over from that perspective? I mean, how are you going to work around that? Do you think?
Well, if you're asking me, I'm happy to jump right in. Look, I wouldn't tell anybody how they have to live, and I've talked to plenty of city libertarians who will say how they're freer by living in the city. For one, number one, they don't have a car and they don't have to deal with it. And we're talking about the fantastic future where we have self-driving cars. Today, we live in the Stone Age, where I'm still stopping off to pump gas and have to keep my hands on the wheel. But yeah, I mean, cities are, yes, the answer is yes. Cities are becoming less desirable places to live from a statistical standpoint, not just my particular preferences. I can see lots of values in cities, and I go visit cities on a relatively regular basis. But you're going to have more problems with neighbors in whatever way in a city than I'm going to have out in the country, because the fact is, I had no problems with neighbors out in the country. And so, it's just whatever you wish to trade. I don't. I would, as an aside, I'd say I'm not sure that dating is that much better in the city. What do you think?
I mean, where am I going to go if there's nobody around for miles around? I mean, you got a larger concentration, you have a better selection. Of course, a city would be better, unless
Hey,
you
there's a
want to
good
do online
shindig,
dating. But it's not
in a
even
big
just
barn.
dating. Yeah, like people like to be around other people. I think that's kind of sad. And maybe people will have that kind of beaten out of them with COVID. I have a lot of friends that are asking about New Zealand
Yes.
and South America, Mexico. What do you think about those three places? Anywhere to go if you don't want to be, in New Hampshire, a cold place?
Yes, let's go to that question next. There was one more question that I have forgotten from
About Puerto Rico.
Oh, good point. Great one.
Yep, thanks. So Puerto Rico is desirable because of its location, and it has a large city. San Juan, big city. And again, people have their preferences, and you should do what you want. When you start getting up in those, ivory towers that, Peter Schiff and those sorts are buying in, then you're gonna have fewer problems. Like, rich people kind of just get what they want. But again, rich people, their biggest problem is rich people, right? Like, they live next to other people that are used to getting what they want. And so, whatever your preference is, Puerto Rico is a 3-hour direct flight from Tampa or Miami. Wham, bam, you're there. The U.S. Virgin Islands has an incredibly high crime rate. Not to say that, it's necessarily going to affect you. Mexico has a high crime rate, but it doesn't have a high crime rate against tourists, especially American tourists. So, I'd say Puerto Rico, definitely better, especially if you're going to open a business there, a high, income business in Puerto Rico. You can enjoy some of the benefits. I think that in Saipan, with its remoteness, I mean, it was literally a 15-hour flight from, it was 13 hours from Reagan to Tokyo, a 3-hour flight from Tokyo to Guam, a 45-minute flight from Guam to Saipan. So, it's remote. It's got lots of restaurants and things that we're used to, 55,000 people in the jurisdiction. And so, it's got what you want, but it's very remote.
I think it's funny that you think 50,000 people is enough people to satisfy a city girl like me, but that's fine. We don't all have to live in the city, but it's like what my hometown was. Okay, so food shortages. What if you're in, I was thinking about, okay, Puerto Rico's cool. I have some friends there, nice capital gains.
Well, before we go to food shortages, let's discuss South America.
Oh yeah, okay, fine.
Mexico.
There's so many things I'm concerned about. So many ways this could all go wrong.
So Mexico, love it, and you can truly find freedom in Mexico. you've got to find the right place. The lowest crime rate in Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula, and perhaps something to look at. Lots of people like Cancun and Cozumel.
Are
And
those crime ridden or no? Because they've got all the cartels. Are the cartels going to kill us all, or can we pay them off? How does it work?
in is it Yucatan Peninsula, where in this particular province, so there's a peninsula and a province. The Yucatan province, Estado, actually, is the least crime-ridden place, and those two cities, I believe, are both in Yucatan. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, it's
That works for me. So
better. Yeah,
I like the beach.
yeah.
That's already good. Okay, Mexico's making a comeback. I was thinking of Acapulco, but I'm a little worried about the violence there. And if there's poverty, then it could just spiral out.
Yeah, Acapulco is beautiful. When you're looking at the beaches, the crime doesn't particularly matter if you know, keep yourself in sort of places where you don't have to deal with crime. I wouldn't wander around the streets at 2 a.m. What I found to be the worst thing about Acapulco is the streets are just covered in trash and dog poop. I mean, nobody's maintaining them. Mm-hmm. So if I do want to walk, and I walk every day, I'm doing a few miles every single day. It's, you got to look at the things you're looking at when you're on the street, and the things you're looking at on the street aren't always that great. South America, Chile,
Argentina, I love it there so much.
Their economy's crashing.
Their economy's crashing. Uruguay I've heard great things about it. I hear they really aren't that big of fans of Americans in Uruguay. But, they may change your mind or say you're Canadian.
Listen, yeah, I can make it work. But okay, that's good to know. Argentina, this is the argument that I've heard, and I actually agree with. In Latin America, they've had such variances in their currency, and they've had such big fluctuations. They're in essence a lot more prepared for a economic collapse because it ain't their first rodeo. So it's kind of a better option. Keeping that in mind, go on with Argentina, Chile. I know that you suggested as well.
Yeah, Chile's had the longest history of attracting libertarians for whatever reason, and then there's the Gulf Gulch. I believe they've got this little community that they put together there, not to be confused with the one that went under and people lost money on. So there's two of them.
Oh no, they really copied the name.
The name was similar, but it was...
Yeah, it's like Gulch's. It's not good. As a person that was... Yeah, no, thumbs down on that name. As much as I love the book and I love the idea, I think that could do a rebrand considering, because it's right in the same region. Yep. But, I found that they didn't really prosecute crime very efficiently there. We tried to get the original guy who created that land project and take him to court. And we were really disappointed with the ability to kind of resolve any kind of white collar crime, I guess it would be considered. So, I had also heard that Chile was a great panacea, but I have some questions. And I believe that now they have a little bit more of a socialist push in the country that is making it less economically attractive. But, that's always changing, I guess.
America too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I do like Buenos Aires as a choice. It has got some of the best architecture in the world, and great museums, and they can weather the storms. Your American dollar which is weakening right now internationally, is still very cool, very, very strong there. I mean, seriously, you can go out to eat for $5, and
amazing.
You can't find that in many places. So yeah, I do like Argentina for that reason. Haven't been there yet, and that's on the list. But right now, the list is on hold because the COVID time.
COVID times, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. Okay, so we still didn't do New Zealand, and that one's everybody always says New Zealand, but they have bad gun rights, and gun rights, as we've seen with all the problems in the U.S. right now, they seem to be keeping the government honest, and it keeps the populace civil. Some people may feel differently about that, so let's be a little bit more neutral. I guess a lot of our listeners would say that it keeps you safer. But what about the gun rights in New Zealand, and how does that factor into freedom?
Gun rights suck in New Zealand. They suck in Canada. They suck in California. When you start going after the jurisdictions that allow people the freedom to possess tools of self-defense, you're going to find that those areas shrink dramatically when you're just talking about laws. Now, many places, it doesn't really matter what you have so long as, you don't ever run across the lawman. New Zealand, very law and order place. And I wouldn't personally possess a long arm or pistol in New Zealand. However, there are a lot of places in the world where you're just like, I don't need a gun because crime rate's low. And so I think that's up to the individual. And like I said, freedom is about the individual. It's not about sort of this aggregate number, because for me, guns aren't the most important thing in the world. And honestly, if you are a gun person, I think you have to admit that there's only 1 or 2 times in your life you're going to use these things. So, whatever.
Or hopefully never, yeah.
Hopefully never. But, a lot of people have brandished a weapon and a crime's gone away. I don't want to diminish that. I think that, guns do sort of keep us free, but I mean, are the freest states in America for guns? Arizona, New Hampshire, Vermont just lost it. I mean, are these places, Alaska, are these places delightful paradises? They're not. They don't. I don't think guns themselves are the foundation of liberty. I think that it comes to a populace that's educated and interested.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the lack of, sorry, Josh, I was just going to say to support that. I mean, the lack of gun control, or rather, they don't have guns supposedly, but they have so many more murders in Chicago. It's a very weird city where supposedly they've a lot of these, tight rules around it, but yet they're killing each other even more. So that's weird.
Yep.
You know what I find about New Zealand, just to bring it back to that, me being an Aussie, I find New Zealand and Australia generally have had such good lifestyles that they tend to start to bend over for every despicable rule that the state wants to impose.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, our government's great. Look, we've got all the newest cars, all the newest stuff. The same thing that Americans have dealt with for a while. They're so comfortable that they're willing to get rorted. And they're ready for tyranny down there, especially with COVID. Like you saw it with Melbourne. I'm living in Berlin, and we have thousands of cases here. And people are like, I'll wear a mask if I go shopping and just general normal things. I protect myself from some weird germ that's floating around. But in Melbourne, they had 100 and something cases. And all of a sudden, they're shutting down the entire city. They've put police around one building and on every floor of the building because there was one case in the building, and they're locking all borders down. And Australians aren't. They're cheering for this. They're cheering for it. And New Zealand has a very similar culture to Australia, where they're very, very happy, comfortable people, and that's great. But the problem with that, the downside of that, eventually they deal with. Just letting tyrannical laws just override them.
So, as a person who's dedicated their life, in the relatively recent past, to looking for the freest places on earth, I've decided to sort of consider COVID to be an anomaly in the course of human events. And the reason is that you can see places that are quite free acting in ways that are very, very unfree. And I'm not saying that should be just forgotten about. And I'm not saying, forget the liberty activists in that area. All I'm saying is that, I believe that if you're going to have a state, that the single best use for that state is during a global pandemic. Freedom isn't free, and it's going to cost you old people to COVID in this particular instance. Now, do I think that's worth it from an economic standpoint? Well, okay. Did we need to crash the economy over the deaths of, potentially 500,000 people? I don't think it was worth it, but that's just my opinion on this topic. So I've decided to kind of let it all go. And, I'm hoping I try to look at these things outside of COVID. What you really have to look for with COVID is, what is the government going to do in the future? So what I like in the United States is that there's people filing sort of habeas corpus lawsuits saying, hey, you just put us all on house arrest for the last 6 months, and you did it without rule of law. And we need from the courts, we need information about whether this was acceptable or not acceptable. Because I absolutely believe that in the course of human events, viruses are going to occur, pandemics are going to occur. And if you want to live in a place where you feel free because they lock everybody down and force them to wear masks and gloves and have a daily enema, whatever it is that you want to have, like that's what you should be able to do in the place that you want to do it, so long as you agree ahead of time. You like the guy that got an American that got killed off in North Korea. North Korea is not a tourist location. Okay. Yeah. You went to the most tyrannical, insane place on earth and things went badly. I shall sleep well tonight, but still say that what happened to you was wrong. Like I can do both of those things. So, people should have what they want. And some people truly want tyranny.
It's amazing.
Well, let's hope that people will get a lesson from our free communism trial that this is not that great. So thumbs down, pick up a history book, everybody. Yep. Any final words? I know that we want to respect your time here, Mark, and you've got to run. Josh, did you have a final comment?
No, I mean, I've got so many questions, Mark. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, and but unfortunately, with the hard stop, we got to stop. But we'd love to have you back on.
I'd love to come. I'm always happy to do that. So let me run through a couple of other things. There's people looking to start an organic farm with several dozen families down in Florida. They haven't got a name or anything yet. I have my ear to the ground on these things. There are Indian tribes in the United States that are beginning to try out special economic zones. And because of their relationship with the U.S. government, they can experience much more freedom than, say, inside a state. So, I've said it for years, the Indians may very well set us free. Recently, I believe it was I can't remember the name of the tribe, but a tribe of Indians, basically, Indians just took over half of Oklahoma. And
what do you mean took over?
The United States Supreme Court just ruled that their territories, their tribal lands were illegally taken, and that things weren't done properly. So poof, they've got all the jurisdiction back. Sadly, the court case was because of a sexual offender who said that he was convicted by the wrong jurisdiction. But he is a Native American, so it's a curious situation to keep an eye on.
Silver lining?
Let's just keep it there.
Okay, well, anyway, thanks.
One more.
Oh, good. No. I'm just trying to, tell us more. We're ready.
Thank you. The island of Roatan in Honduras is... Oh,
your favorite one. I know this one.
I do like it. They are now, you can go to Prospera. That's the word prosperity in Spanish. Prospera.hn for pre-sales of their houses and stuff. I don't know what
that's where it starts scaring me. I
hear you.
Gulch, a little bit traumatizing, I have to say.
Let me address that here in just a moment. Currently, I was down the previous road. They've got a new road, and I can't tell you what a big deal that is. Like libertarians are always teased about their relationship with roads, but once you've been in an old school bus, bipping and bopping down this potholed road for a couple of miles, you really appreciate the new road that's come in. The high-speed internet has been run. One of the people on their board has something to do with the internet, provider on the island. They have, phone lines, power lines, everything's running in. They have not, to my knowledge, broken ground on buildings and put in sort of the internal roads in the property. They have a large piece of property there. But you can see their artist mock-ups. By the way, the artist, I believe, the architect claims to be a voluntarist, if that is meaningful to you. It is not a voluntarist group. What they're doing is setting up a special economic zone, but taxes will be extraordinarily low. And but the social freedoms will not be their focus for some time. Check them out. And
don't go there if you want to do hookers and blow.
It's not a good place for hookers and blow.
Okay.
My opinion is, all places are bad places for hookers and blow, but you can do hookers and blow if that's your thing.
It's such a funny phrase, right?
I think for anyone voluntarist, it would be great if you have some sort of, dispute resolution company that you're wanting to start. I think these sorts of things are what people need to start exploring in these free societies.
Right. So they've already got a dispute resolution company set up.
Nice.
Now they do. The Supreme Court of Honduras has not given over jurisdiction so that you can take it above. But, they're basing on a foundation of arbitration to start with, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Further about pre-sales. They've talked with a couple of real estate developers in order to get things going, but the real estate developers are like, what is voluntarism? Why don't you build some houses there first and let's see if there's a demand. So they basically have to start with their own housing on this place. And they are, to my mind, and I am keeping a close eye. I talk to their people relatively regularly. There's a month doesn't go by that I'm not communicating with them. That they are, doing their due diligence. They are, everything's being done in good faith. I like what I see there. Now, for instance, if I was to compare it to, say, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, Saipan, I would say that, you got gun rights in U.S. Mariana Islands. You have, freedom of speech. You have the ability to travel. There's no way they can stop me as an American citizen from coming there right now. Whereas Honduras and Roatan, I couldn't get there if I wanted to. I'd have to paddle a boat from the mainland and probably drive down there. So it's got its pluses and minuses. I'd love to hear more about anybody else's projects out there. I do run a blog on this particular topic. It's called The Move Here Project. I don't update it a lot because there's not a lot of updates, but you can find it on Facebook, The Move Here Project. My name is Mark Edge, and my email is mark@freetalklive.com. Speaking of Free Talk Live, it is on every day from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time at freetalklive.com. And we were just recently ranked the number 25 talk show in the nation. It looks like I need to update my little thing here that says number 26. So there you go.
Top 25 shows in the nation.
I love it.
This is so fun. Thanks so much, Mark. We really appreciate it. And everybody, make sure you go check out Voltoro.com. If you're interested in my work, go to TatianaMoroz.com or Proof of Lovecast. Check out our other podcast out on Fridays. These shows go out on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, and check it out online. We'll see you soon. Bye.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.